The Jason Strain, a Friday the 13th novel, Chapter 26. "We only have about an hour or two of daylight," Stella said. "We need to make camp as soon as possible." "We haven't seen any infected people in hours," Butch said. "We haven't seen any people at all," Val corrected him. It was true, they had been riding for hours and had seen nothing but uninterrupted green jungle, which was occasionally broken by cliffs and breathtaking mountains. Alex wouldn't have been surprised to see a dinosaur poke its head out from between the ancient trees. A chilly mist had crept up them as they climbed higher, and they were all glad they had wore long sleeves and long pants. Alex's ass was starting to get seriously sore. She couldn't imagine how it must be for Butch. Still, it felt good to have his warm body pressed against her back, and his arms around her waist. Something about having him behind her like that, holding on to her as she rode, sent a constant, low-grade electric tingle through her body that was becoming difficult to ignore. "Look," Stella said. Alex looked at where Stella was pointing and saw a small wooden sign that read, "Cabinas." It was almost completely overgrown and looked like it had been placed in such a way as to avoid attention rather than attract it. The sign pointed down to a tiny road that would have been easy to miss, even looking right at it. "It's worth a shot, guys," Stella said. "Stay alert, everybody." They turned and headed down the little path. The sun was going down fast, staining the mist a deep, bloody crimson. At the other end of the path was a bigger, more extravagant sign, this one carved from a huge rough-hewn log hanging on chains from a stout, rectangular frame. "Campo Cotamundi," it read. There was a carving of a pointy-nosed raccoon with a long striped tail that curved upward to make the C in the name. Directly ahead was a large rustic building with a wide screened-in porch. There was a man on the porch, but it was difficult to make him out in the failing light. "Who's there?" Stella called, slipping down off her horse and aiming her rifle at the shape behind the screen. "Well," a deep voice replied, accompanied by the creak of a large man getting up out of a chair onto an ancient floorboards. "Looks like you folks arrived in time." The man pushed the screen door open and came out into the front yard. He was well above 6 feet tall, with long blonde hair pulled back into a neat braid and a well-groomed reddish beard. Thick and bear-shaped, with a heavy gut and huge arms, he looked like he could have snapped Stella's rifle in half with his bare hands. "There's no need for that sort of thing," the man said. "This is Costa Rica, not New York City." Stella frowned. "Are you alone?" "Yup," the man replied. "Though not anymore, I guess. Business is pretty slow up here, but that's the way I like it. Not to be rude, of course. How many cabins will y'all be renting? I can stable your horses, too, for a small additional fee." "Renting?" Stella nodded back to the rest of them, and they all dismounted. "Have you not had any attacks up here?" "Attacks?" The man threw her a puzzled look. "What the hell are you talking about? Jaguars?" "He doesn't know," Butch said, incredulous. "Well, hell, where are my manners?" he said. "I guess I've been living up here alone too long. Why don't y'all come on in and have a cold drink? You must be tired from your ride." Stella glanced at Butch and Alex, but Val was already heading in after the big man. So they hitched the horses to a low post and followed. "Name's Marlowe," the man said, "and this here is Enrique." Enrique was clearly the model of the creature on the sign. He sat up on his hind legs, his little nose twitching, and darted across the room, then climbed up onto Marlowe's big shoulder. "Pleased to meet you. Would any of you like some ice-cold lemonade?" "That would be great," Alex said. So in the midst of the madness, they sat down on a big, worn but comfortable handmade chair and stretched out in hammocks and looked out at the setting sun, watching flocks of noisy parrots coming in to roost for the night. "So what you're telling me," Marlowe said, lighting a pipe and smoking thoughtfully, "is that there's this virus making everyone into homicidal maniacs." He handed a large nut to Enrique, who snatched it up and began cracking it against the floor with swift taps. "You'll forgive me if I'm a bit skeptical. And what about this Jason guy, the carrier of this disease?" Stella did her best to explain everything, but even to Alex, who had lived through it all, it sounded so far-fetched when you tried to put it into words. Well, zombies and undead killers and all that notwithstanding, those of us who remain among the living need to eat. I've got some fried chicken in the icebox. Anybody hungry? To be sitting in the middle of the wild jungle with the coatimundi at the table and guns substituting as weird but deadly silverware, it seemed utterly surreal to be eating fried chicken, biscuits, and potato salad. It was damn good, too. Alex realized that the real torture of this living nightmare was that they were trapped in lulls such as this, ordinary moments when madness was forgotten, and Alex could remember what life used to be like. If it was a non-stop battle, it might have been easier to keep going, to get numb to it all and not think beyond the next severed head. But sitting beside Butch, feeling comfortably full and cozy and safe, somehow seemed to hurt even more, because it reminded her of what she had to lose. From the moment they arrived, Val was all goo-goo-eyed over their burly host. It made Alex smile to see the tough-as-nails Val going all soft and girly, and batting her lashes. Marlowe clearly noticed her attention and seemed baffled, but pleased. Okay, listen up, lovebirds, Stella said. Just because there have been no infected people up here yet does not mean we can let our guard down. I'll take the first watch, but I want everyone here in the main house. Stay close, and don't forget that I still have this. She gestured to the scrambling device on her belt. In all the fighting and chaos, Alex had almost forgotten about those contraptions on their heads. It would be so good to get the damn things removed. If y'all want to clean up, there's a pump out back, Marlowe said. It's cold, but it'll do. You can have your pick of the guest rooms. I'll be down at the end of the hall, there. Stay alert, everyone, Stella said again. We can't afford to lose anyone else. Val felt as if her entire universe had been turned upside down 100 times. She no longer felt any connection to God or to her deceased father and husband. She felt utterly alone in the world and was deeply confused and conflicted at every turn. Here she was, stuck in this endless bloody nightmare with mud people and liberal race traders. But those people, especially Stella, had helped her, saved her life even. She was finding it harder and harder to think of Stella as less than human, and that little scrap of doubt put everything she'd been taught to believe in into jeopardy. She wanted to believe that it was all part of a test that the Lord was putting her through, but it all seemed so random and hopeless. She was beginning to lose faith. Then they met Marlowe, a strong, powerful, independent Caucasian like Val had been dreaming of. Good, healthy stock, skilled in wilderness survival with a nice big chunk of land to call his own. She was head over heels in love the moment she laid eyes on him. Could this be God's plan for her? Had he been leading her to Marlowe all this time? Could it be that the reason she had never conceived with James was because of his sin, not hers? She did not know, but she planned to find out. It had been ridiculously easy to get Marlowe into bed. He had not been with a woman in over a year and seemed amazed that she really wanted him. She was not experienced with men, since she had only ever been with James, and it had been her father's decision to marry them. She had never deliberately seduced a man in her life, and she found it perversely delicious. Touching his big hand, his barrel chest, looking up into his pure blue eyes, showing him that she wanted him. All these things were new and exciting to Val. He was so much more of a man than James had ever been, and he made her feel things she had never felt before. When they lay together, spent and sweat slick in each other's arms, she decided that she would stay there with Marlowe. If she went back to the States, she would surely be arrested and put back in that hellish prison. She would not allow that to happen. She and Marlowe could be safe here. Build a wall, have babies, be happy. Val had almost drifted to sleep when the stealthy sound woke her suddenly. Her hand searched for the .45 before she was fully awake, and her body rolled away and out of the bed as a blur of movement came down swiftly behind her. But her hand found only the small metal rectangle of Marlowe's Zippo lighter. In her foolish state of arousal, she had left her rifle and .45 in the main room, with the other equipment and her clothes. The only weapon in the room was Marlowe's machete, and it was in his side of the bed. Stupid! She was naked and unarmed, crouching to face her attacker. But it was not another infected person. It was Jason, the one in the hockey mask the others had been talking about. Val had never really believed all those crazy stories, but looking at the unbendable, nearly 7-foot-tall truth of him, She had no choice but to believe. The hulking nightmare in the white mask held the handle of a rusty pitchfork. The tines of the fork were buried in Marlowe's throat. Thick droplets of dark blood dripped from Jason's eye and fingertips, splashing down on Marlowe's face and chest. Marlowe was making a horrible gurgling sound like water going down a partially clogged drain. Val felt a kind of horrible icy fury gush through her body. How could this happen when everything was falling into place? Why was everything she cared about always taken away? She did not make a sound as Jason yanked back the pitchfork and Marlowe's big body began to convulse and shudder. She sucked in a deep breath and turned to run. She closed the door behind her and made for the main room. Val found Stella at the other end of the hallway, dressed and armed, eyes wide in the light cast by her flashlights. "Val, get dressed," Stella said. "Jason is here. The tracking device, No shit," Val said. "He killed Marlowe." She reached for her pants and her machete. "Come on," she said, slipping into her pants, tucking the Zippo into her hip pocket for luck. "We can't leave him like that." "Right," Stella said. "I'll cover you." The two of them crept back down the hallway toward the closed door. Val had not bothered to put on her shirt, and her bare skin prickled with goosebumps. There was no noise coming from the room. The door was unlocked, yet it remained closed. Val put her ear to the door, but there was no sound. Val motioned with her chin for Stella to cover her. Stella nodded, and then Val kicked the door open and raised the machete above her head. The room was empty. There was a huge congealing lake of blood on the bed and sloppy streaks across the floor leading to the window. The screen had been torn away and the ragged edges flapped in the light breeze. The pitchfork was still there, lying beside Marlowe's discarded pile of clothing. Marlowe's machete was gone. "Damn it," Val said. "We need to warn Butch and Alex," Stella said. Alex had sworn to herself that they would rest tonight, not get carried away, but it was impossible. The thin, lumpy bed was uncomfortable, and she was wound too tight to sleep. Plus Butch was there with his big, calloused hands caressing her thighs, tracing the shape of her gracilis muscles beneath her skin, and making her melt against him. Before she knew it, they were at it again, and rather than the slow, gentle pace of the night before, Butch seemed intensely driven, almost crazy with infectious, almost animalistic passion. He threw her weight around the room effortlessly, but as he stood lifting her, he stopped, laughing suddenly, then cursing and hopping on one foot. "Costa Rica sex tip number 328, Butch said, putting Alex back down on the bed and pulling a large splinter from the ball of his foot. "Wear shoes." She laughed too, and they put their boots on, giggling like kids as he lifted her again and carried her across the room. He had her pinned against the wall right beside a large window with no glass, only a screen. Alex had the heel of her hand stuffed into her mouth to keep from crying out and waking the others. But the sounds trapped inside her mouth were getting stronger and stronger. When the thick blade of a machete tore through the rusty screen inches from her face, Alex dropped her hand and screamed for real. "Shit!" Butch screamed, stumbling back awkwardly. "Holy shit!" Jason was pushing his way through the screen, and Alex ducked under a rough, handmade wooden table as he brought the machete down with a solid thump into the tabletop. Butch was beside her, lifting one end of the table, and she nodded and grabbed the other side. Together they tried to push Jason back, using the thick table as a shield. It was like trying to push a truck. Alex could feel herself slipping backward along with Butch as Jason forced them both back. He pulled the blade of the machete free from the tabletop and drove it in again and again. The wood was beginning to splinter. As they skidded closer to the door, Butch looked back over his shoulder. "Do you remember if the doors open in or out?" "What?" Alex couldn't seem to get her mind around that simple question. "The door," Butch said. They were less than a foot away from the doorway. "We better hope it opens out." Then the thick legs of the table hit the wall on either side of the door. "Go!" Butch shouted. Alex turned and opened the door. It did open out, and she and Butch were able to slip through, buying a handful of precious seconds while Jason smashed through the table. They made for the front door and out into the driveway. It wasn't until they saw Val and Stella that they realized they were naked except for their boots. "Well," Stella said, eyeing Butch's naked body. "Alex could have killed her if they didn't have bigger fish to fry." "Fuck," Val said. Oh, fuck. Marlowe, Stella said. They backed away through the rectangle frame that held the Campo Codamundi sign as their naked and infected host came tearing down the path. Val raised the barrel of her rifle and shot not at him, but at the heavy sign. First one chain, then the other. The massive log smashed down on Marlowe as he passed beneath it, trapping him under its enormous weight. As he hissed and squirmed, Val turned away with eyes squeezed shut. It was the first time Alex had seen anything even close to emotion in Val's hard features. Alex wondered what had become of Enrique, the Codamundi. She hoped fiercely that he was okay. Stella stepped around the sign and Marlowe as if planning to return to the house. "Are you crazy?" Butch asked. The screen door banged open and Jason appeared on the porch. "And here comes our main event," Stella said, down on one knee and swiftly assembling something from her pack. "If we can take him down and bring him back to Dr. Kane's, we will have killed 2 birds with 1 stone. "You think you're just going to tranquilize that fucking monster?" Val said, a sharp edge of near hysteria in her voice. "He'll kill all of us and infect us." "Just calm down," Stella said, drawing a bead on the advancing Jason. "We can do this." She squeezed off a dart, and Alex saw it bounce harmlessly off Jason's mask. "Shit," she said softly, backing toward the fallen sign and reloading with amazingly steady hands. She raised the barrel of the tranquilizer gun when Marlowe grabbed her leg. Her shot went wild, and Jason was closing in, swinging with the machete, when Val suddenly tackled Stella, knocking her out of Jason's path. Butch had grabbed Val's rifle and fired repeatedly at Jason. The bullets backed him up a few steps, but did not take him down. Together, Stella and Val rolled back and away. They scrambled to their feet. "You saved me?" Stella said, incredulous. "Only because you have that thing that's keeping my head from blowing off," Val replied with a smirk, but somehow Alex did not entirely believe her. "Fuck," Stella said, grabbing Val's forearm. "You're cut." There was a big bleeding gash on Val's arm, so deep that Alex could see a gleam of white bone at the widest point in the cut. "I know," Val said, pulling a Zippo lighter from the hip pocket of her pants. "But I'm taking that fucker with me. Run." Val ran past Jason, hollering at the top of her lungs. "Come on, you fucker," she screamed. "You son of a bitch! You think you can fuck with Valkyrie Randall?" She ran to the side of the porch and grabbed a large white metal cylinder with a large valve at the top. Alex recognized it as the same kind of container that held the kerosene for her father's barbecue grill back in Homer. Jason turned toward Val as she fumbled with the valve. "Come on," Stella said, grabbing Alex's arm. "Move!" Alex turned away as Jason grabbed Val by the throat, and the kerosene caught. An orange wash of fire lit up the night. Alex ran, heart beating wildly, breath like iron in her chest. They ran and ran for what felt like a year until Alex noticed that Stella was starting to fall behind. She was limping heavily. Alex called out to Butch, "Stop! Wait!" The 3 of them stopped. Stella did not look good at all. She was grayish and slick with sweat. Her eyes were bright and terrified. Sludgy crimson tears rolled down her cheeks. The beam from her flashlight was unsteady in the darkness. I think," she said, and then turned away and vomited against a tree trunk. "She's infected," Butch said. "Marlowe," Alex said. Stella pulled up her pant leg, revealing a puffy, swollen scrape on her ankle, where Marlowe had clawed her. With shaking hands, she removed the GPS locator from her wrist, hit some buttons, and pressed it into Alex's hand. "This will show you the way to Dr. Kane's," Stella said. "What about the scrambler?" Butch asked. "We can't go anywhere without that." Stella reached down to a pouch on her belt, but before she could reach the scrambler, she started to shake, eyes rolling wildly. Butch grabbed Stella and forced her to the ground. He dropped her flashlight, and it shattered, leaving them in total blackness. Alex was terrified. She couldn't see her hand in front of her face, but she could hear Stella hissing and spitting and Butch cursing. "Get the machete from my belt," Butch said. "Are you crazy?" Alex asked. "I can't see a fucking thing. What if she bites me?" "I've got her head in the dirt. Just do it. Hurry," Butch said. Alex got down on her knees and felt blindly across the damp jungle floor until her fingers encountered cloth and a flailing limb. A leg. Stella's leg, Alex hoped. She followed the leg up towards the waist and met bare skin. Butch's leg. "Higher up," Butch said. Finally, Alex felt the distinctive shape of the machete's leather sheath and pulled the blade free. "Where's her head?" Alex asked. "Just a few inches down from mine," Butch replied, grunting as Stella flew into a fit of desperate struggling. "You're not going to be able to swing the machete or you'll hit me. You'll have to find her neck and power through it." "Right," Alex said. She reached out and felt the stubbly texture of Butch's cheek. "That's me," Butch said. "Now go down about 4 inches." She followed his directions and felt the hot skin of Stella's neck. The muscles beneath were twisting furiously like the muscles of an angry snake. Alex pressed the sharp side of the blade against Stella's neck. "Okay," Alex said. "Watch out." With both hands on the handle and a boot on the tip, Alex pushed down hard, seesawing the blade back and forth as it sank into Stella's neck. Alex worked the edge between the vertebrae and pushed as hard as she could. There was a furious shriek and then silence as Alex felt the machete bite into the dirt below. "Alex," Butch said from somewhere to her left. "Alex, you did it!" She reached shaking hands out toward the sound of his voice. When she touched him, he pulled her tightly into his arms. Alex had completely forgotten that they were both naked. The adrenaline was wearing off and it was starting to get chilly. "Where are we?" Alex asked. "I have no idea," Butch replied. "Naked and lost in the jungle at night with no flashlights," Alex said. "Wonderful." "We'll have to wait for the sun to come up," Butch said. "Well, what the hell are we supposed to do until then?" Alex wrapped her arms tight around Butch, resting her cheek against his shoulder. "I don't know," Butch said. Alex laughed out loud when she felt him hardening against her belly. "You have got to be kidding me." He wasn't. Chapter 27. A green twilight was creeping through the jungle canopy, and Alex could see first the shape of Butch's head and shoulders in the gloom, then the details of his exhausted features. She was also able to make out Stella's headless corpse and her scattered pack beside the broken flashlight. The jungle was alive with a million sounds as birds announced the morning. Flies were waking up too and settling in for breakfast on Stella's body and her severed head. They were already swarming around Stella's bulging eyes, that it looked like she was wearing dark sunglasses. "We need to try and find something to wear," Butch said, "and the scrambler for the cameras." "We need bug repellent," Alex said, "or I'm not going to make it." Butch bent and removed Stella's equipment-laden belt. "I have no idea which one of these things is a scrambler, so we'd better take everything." Alex retrieved Stella's pack. Inside was a single change of clothes, pants, and a shirt, plus a tiny pink thong, but no bra. "Great," Butch said. "None of this is going to fit me." "Here," Alex said, taking the long-sleeved shirt and trying the sleeves around Butch's waist so that the body of the shirt hung down over his butt. She then pulled the body of the shirt between his legs and tucked it under the sleeves around his waist, forming something like a sumo wrestler's diaper. "Wow," Butch said, looking down at his new outfit. "That's lovely." "Look," Alex said, slipping on the thong. "It's better than nothing. At least it will protect little Butchie from chiggers and snakes and things." "Good thinking," Butch said, smiling. Alex had to use the machete to hack the pants into shorts, since she couldn't fit her muscular thighs into the legs of Stella's pants. She buckled Stella's belt around her waist, setting it low on her hips. She was able to fashion a top out of the fabric from the two pant legs, but she was pretty sure that it would fall right off if they had to fight or run. They slathered themselves with sunscreen and bug repellent and consulted the GPS device Stella had given them. "Can't you use that to see where Jason is?" Butch asked. "See if he's following us." "I don't know," Alex said. "I don't want to push any buttons because I'm afraid we'll lose the way to Dr. Kane's lab." Butch shook his head. "Well, we better get going then." Alex was so burnt out and exhausted that she felt nothing when they finally did reach Dr. Kane's lab. It was situated in a sprawling compound that looked like something Smoke might have built, if he were 10 years older and a millionaire. It clung to the side of a sheer mountain with breathtaking views all the way down to the ocean. There was a wall like the one around Smoke's compound, but no visible doorbell or intercom, and no amount of banging on the gate produced any result. It took several long minutes of trial and error for them to figure out how to use the radio in Stella's pack. "This is Dr. Kane," a rich, silky voice spoke up from the speaker. "To whom am I speaking?" "This is Butch Mahan," Butch said. "Stella and Tig and everyone are all dead. It's just me and Alex." He looked at Alex, eyebrows forming a silent question. "Oh," Alex said. Coyle. Alex Coyle." "Alex Coyle," Butch said into the radio. "Contestants, correct?" Dr. Kane asked. "That's right," Butch replied. "Stella said you can take these cameras off." Instead of an answer, there was a low buzz, and the gate began to slide open, automatically. Unsure of what to do, Butch and Alex went inside. Everything was made to blend into the natural surroundings. There were several huge ancient trees inside the walls, and the houses had been built organically around them. There was a large, pristine swimming pool reflecting the flawless sky, and every inch of outdoor space was landscaped with stunning tropical flora of all varieties and colors. It looked more like a spa for rich ladies to recover from their facelifts than any kind of scientific facility. When the woman in the white coat appeared from a lush green archway, she looked far more like she was ready to daub mud on them and put cucumbers on their eyes than splice DNA or cure viruses. She was gorgeous and made Alex intensely uncomfortable, until she met her cold gray gaze and realized that this woman was not even remotely interested in Butch. "I'm Dr. Helen Kane," she said. "Butch," Butch said, holding out a hand for her to shake. She looked at his offered hand as if he had exposed himself. "I do not shake hands," she said. "It's highly unsanitary, especially in an environment such as this." She turned to Alex. "You must be Alex. Follow me, please." They followed Dr. Kane into a beautiful bungalow like some tropical honeymoon suite. It was furnished in a cozy, faux rustic style with fragrant bunches of fresh flowers on every surface. There was a fireplace in one corner and a patio with 2 colorful hammocks. The bathroom was ridiculously luxurious, and the queen-size bed was veiled in delicate white mosquito netting. It was yet another totally surreal moment in a seemingly endless string of surreal moments. There they were, filthy, sweaty, barely dressed in scraps and rags, having been through 18 different kinds of hell, having battled zombies and sharks, and let's not forget about Jason. But despite all that, they made it here, to this $1,000,000 love nest. It didn't seem possible for things to get any weirder. "Please get cleaned up," Dr. Kane said. "I provided a good antibacterial soap, and I suggest you use that rather than that homemade llama oil and seaweed junk. When you are finished, come to my lab and I'll remove those cameras." "Where's the lab?" Alex asked. "It's located in what was formerly the garage. Just follow the tire tracks. Don't worry, though. I can assure you that it is very clean." Without another word, she turned on her heel and left. In the bathroom, they found a bottle of medicinal-smelling green liquid soap. Alex cast a longing glance at the wonderfully fragrant nut-brown cake of handmade soap by the sink. It seemed so much nicer than the awful green stuff, but Dr. Kane had been quite insistent. So Alex ran some hot water in the large tub and began to peel off the sticky rags. Butch stood beside her and did the same. When they slipped naked into the steaming water, only the thought of finally being free of those awful camera rigs allowed them to scrub down quickly and avoid falling back into love-making once again. The harsh, unpleasant hospital smell of the soap helped too, cutting through any kind of sensuality like a stern chaperone. They scrubbed and rinsed repeatedly. Then they bundled up in clean white robes and rubber flip-flops. Alex slipped the scrambler off Stella's belt and into one large pocket, and they went to find Dr. Kane. The garage was fairly easy to locate. There was a large, rugged Jeep and a pickup truck with a cage bolted to the bed, parked outside the roll-up door. A smaller, human-sized door on the far side of the building was left unlocked. They poked their heads cautiously inside. Inside was far more like what one would imagine It was clean, white, well-lit, and filled with mysterious equipment. Machines doing various busy jobs, computers displaying unfathomable calculations, and Dr. Kane smack dab in the middle of it all, regarding a vial of something as clear and unremarkable as water. On the far side of the room, behind a wall of glass, there were several large cages. Expecting rats or monkeys, they discovered that the cages contained infected people. The glass room was heavily soundproofed, so Alex could hear nothing but the self-important hum of the machines. But she could see that the infected people were shrieking, flinging themselves ceaselessly against the bars of their cages. She shuddered and looked away. "There you are," Dr. Kane said. She sat the vial down in a metal rack of similar vials, removed her gloves, and turned to wash her hands in a still sink. "I am not a medical doctor, so I am neither qualified nor willing to administer general anesthesia." She put on fresh gloves and motioned them over to a still table. "I will use a local to numb the area, but I will still have to guarantee you that this will be quite painful. Nonetheless, I will need you to be still. If you feel that you will not be able to remain still for the duration of the procedure, I will be happy to provide restraints." Butch's eyes went wide. "Jesus," he said softly. "I'll go first," Alex said, pushing down her fear and stepping up to the table. She knew that if she had to watch Butch first, she could lose her nerve. "Excellent," said Dr. Kane. "Let's get started." After the horrible procedure was complete for both of them, Alex was still in a lot of pain, but she was so utterly exhausted that she fell into a dead sleep almost the instant her head hit the pillow. Dr. Kane had assured them that she would fill them in on everything in the morning, but then Alex wanted nothing more than sleep. Morning seemed to come far too soon. Alex woke with a splitting headache, and, though she'd never been much of a drinker, she imagined this was what it would feel like to be hungover. In spite of the awful pulse of pain in her head, she was thrilled to finally be free of that god-forsaken camera. Butch woke beside her and moaned, fingers pressed against his temple. "Oh, baby," he said. "I feel like roadkill." "Me too," Alex said. He leaned over and rested his head on her shoulder. She put her arms around him and pulled him close, wishing for the billionth time that this was over, that they were somewhere, anywhere but here. "We'd better go find the good doctor," Alex said. "See about this plan of hers to capture Jason." "We can do that in a few minutes," Butch said, burrowing between her breasts like he was trying to hide. "I want a few more minutes in a world where none of this is happening." "I know," Alex said, stroking his hair. It was getting longer now. When the game began, it was almost shaves. How many days ago was that? It seemed like years. "Alex," he said, looking up at her. But whatever he wanted to say trailed off, and he pressed his face back into her breasts. "I know," she said again. "I know." Dr. Kane had provided some clean and generic clothing that almost fit and was way better than the scraps left over from Stella's pack. A silent, older Tika woman arrived with breakfast and coffee. They ate in silence. With food and caffeine in her system, the dull thump of her residual headache started to fade, and it wasn't long before their new clothes were on the floor and they were back in the bed. With everything they'd been through, Alex couldn't stand the thought of putting anything off, not even for a moment. They could die the moment they walked out the door. When they were dressed again and as ready as they would ever be, they went to find Dr. Kane in the lab. "I see you're awake," Dr. Kane said. "Allow me to fill you in on the details of this situation. She paused. "The individual known as Jason Voorhees has been infected with a mutated strain of a designer virus that I created. When DNA from Jason was spliced into my virus, a spontaneous mutation occurred. And once freed from its sterile container, the virus infected Jason and all the normal humans around him. It is transmitted through the blood that weeps copiously from Jason's skin, eyes, and every other orifice, coating his weapons and dripping into the open wounds of his victims. When normal humans are infected, it gives them a kind of immortality, if you will. They too can pass on the infection through contact with contaminated blood. You are extremely lucky to have made it this far." Alex listened with growing disbelief. It was almost too much to take in. "I have the antivirus prepped prepared, and it will counteract the Jason strain, Dr. Kane continued. But it needs another 24 hours to reach sufficient strength to release it into the atmosphere. She indicated a long, narrow compartment at the base of the tube leading up through the low ceiling. I've harnessed my own antivirus to the common code, a kind of viral carjacking, if you will. It will easily spread throughout the human population in the affected area. Those who are infected will die, without the Jason strain to animate their bodies, and those who are not will be rendered immune. I have rigged this device to automatically release the antivirus once it has achieved the desired potency. She frowned and looked away. In the unlikely event that something should happen to me before full potency has been reached, that is. Right, Butch said. But what about Jason himself? Jason is the carrier, and the virus inside him is extremely potent. The first generation. The common code cannot penetrate his system because he is not technically alive, as we understand life. To completely eliminate the virus inside Jason, the pure antivirus must be injected directly into his brain. The best method would be through the eye. She turned away, nodding to herself. Yes, that's it. The eye. Stella said you had a plan to recapture Jason? Alex asked Dr. Kane. Ah, yes, Dr. Kane said. Of course. Let me explain. Okay, this has been chapters 26 and 27 of Friday the 13th, The Jason Strain. And I feel like the book is back to being good again. You know, the last two chapters, 24 and 25, were pretty dull. Like, actually, the first two dull chapters in the entire book. But I like where this ending is going. We've only got one more upload left of this book, so tomorrow will be the conclusion of The Jason Strain. Tune in tomorrow and let's see how this crazy book comes to a close. Until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening, and have a great night.